Tai sveiki visi, toliau tęsiam neredaguotą pokalbius ir šiandien turėsim tokį neplanuotą epizodą, bet visada smagu išgirsti naujausias naujienas ir visą tai, kas vyksta Kijeve. Tai turim Viktor Tregubov ir kaip visada bus iš pirmų lūpų. So, hi Viktor.
Hi.
I am not even sure where should we start. You know, it's 21 long or short days. You are guys being attacked, you know, by those war criminals. You are somewhere around Kiev. So we saw in the morning that, you know, like it was a few more peaceful days, let's say, in the capital of yours. And again, they are targeting civilian, you know, living quarters of the city. How would you explain what's the phase of the war right now in Ukraine, in Kiev? Because when you listen to Zelensky, you kind of think that, yeah, the war is, you know, Ukrainians have won the war already, but still there is like a small trouble. Those leftovers who are still shooting and, you know, shelling and bombing. So how do you see the progress and the situation right now?
Well, both positions are not so far from truth, actually. Yes, for now, the main Russian advance is stopped, and we are even slowly counter-attacking on several directions. While on other several directions, we still have problems. And first of all, that's Mariupol and some problems near Izium city. But we, for now, trying to handle that. And I'd say for Russians, the situation is worse than for us because they have no reserves, they have no good supply lines, and they already got, I'd say losses they cannot replenish in the near future. So technically, from the whole military point of view, they are pretty more than we. That's good.
You know, you can curse on this podcast, no problem.
Okay, they are pretty much fucked. But from a humanitarian perspective, the thing is far from so good because as well as they couldn't take some cities by infiltration, they now try and they are afraid to get them by assault. They trying to get them just with raising them to rubble. That's what they already did with Volnovakha, and it's not a small town. It's like several dozens of thousands of denizers. They already tried to do it with some Kievan satellite cities like Hostomel, Irpin, and Bucha.
So you mean just demolish them to the ground, yeah?
Yeah, basically the Grozny scenario, if you remember Chechnya war, they just afraid to go into the city while there is some building standing, because in any building it could be a guy with javelin, so they try to raise them to rubble entirely. That's a bad tactic, but that's the only thing they could actually do for now. And I think they just trying to sell us the terror as they bargaining chip during negotiations. They want to have some grounds for negotiations, and they have no military threat to actually pose. So they now try to do pure violence and to trade this violence like, okay, you negotiate and maybe we will stop. They just took the population of Mariupol and some other towns and cities as hostages and switched to tactic of terrorists. Either you stop and either you listen to our demands, or we should kill these thousands of people. And that's
by the way, the Mariupol situation, is there any supplies that come into the city, like, you know, in small doses, or it's completely closed and, you know, nothing comes in, goes in?
For now, it's mainly closed. There are some ways to get supplies there, but the good thing is actually that there was pretty much supplies there. pretty much supply is there from the beginning, because Mariupol is one of the key points of our defense. It is a well-fortified city. It is a big city, and it has one of the most fierce and motivated and professional troops defending it. So from military standpoint, Mariupol is formidable. The problem is, as I'd say, humanitarian view, because from humanitarian view is still a town with a city with 500,000 of population, and it's like a small European country, you know, and it's catastrophe because we cannot evacuate them, because Russians break their promises about so-called green corridors, and people get killed, and even those who still survive, they are living in conditions that are actually hard to persevere, like without water, without supply of energy, and so on and so on, without heating during the winter. And Mariupol is not the hottest city on the earth, so that's problematic, I'd say, at least.
Okay, I see. What about Kiev? We see that, you know, on the media that it's being fortified. You know, there's obviously some supplies reaching it from other locations. What is the situation there? Like, is there, because like we see in the media that Russians still are not abandoning the plan to attack Kiev or to take Kiev. How do you see this? Is it possible in any scenario that they can take Kiev?
From my perspective, it's impossible. I'm not bragging here, but they even couldn't encircle it. Practically, they are standing near the Kiev only from the north direction. They couldn't even half encircle the city. So that's not about some kind of blocking, even post. Even you can send a mail from Kyiv to Dnipro, or some kind of, I don't know, some kind of goods. That's not a problem. Kyiv isn't blocked at all. Myself got from Kyiv to Zhytomyr by my own car. So that's, well, not a big deal. And yes, Kyiv is just a good fortified city with good natural defense, real good. And they have no military capacity to do Kyiv any serious harm. Of course, there are rocket missiles, artillery fire, and that's a problem. And they hit actually apartment buildings, including buildings near me or near my mother's home. But it's just the tactics of terror. It's have no real military weight. It's more like trying to induce fear in the population.
But Victor, the question here is like this artillery that they are firing towards Kiev, can it reach the center, or is just the outskirts that they reach?
Artillery fire can reach on the outskirts, but missile fire, long-range missile, of course, can hit center, and sometimes it actually hits center. But Kyiv also have a good system of anti-aircraft defense, so absolutely most of missiles actually are downed before they reach their destination. So I'd say still Kyiv is well, a situation in Kyiv is not great, but really doable. And I even suppose that we are counterattacking slowly near Kyiv. So Kyiv now is just too hard to crack for Russians. That's absolutely my deepest understanding of the situation and my deepest belief.
I would ask, like, what about the supplies? Are they reaching properly, like Kiev and like middle of Ukraine, or is there a problem, like in terms of, I don't know, guns, medicine, and stuff like that?
No problem for now. Absolutely no problem. As I said, Kiev isn't blocked. Most of the roads to Kiev are now free, even for civilian use. I don't even say for military use. So there is no need to, well, to have some I don't know. We have airports in city. We have a big river, Dnieper, that is hard to somehow block. We have many roads leading to Kiev. So for Kiev and for central cities, supply isn't a problem at all. Yes, of course, there are some problems with plenty of goods, like you can sometimes have to have some problems to buy dairy products, but the next day you will buy it. That's like a kind of deficit, but it's not like we're starving there. It's more like we have some problems to get exactly that cheese you love. So.
Okay, what is the situation, let's say, in Kharkiv in terms of the food and supplies?
In Kharkiv, in terms of food and supplies, is good. Still, city isn't blocked. In terms of shellings, it's not so good because the Russians can use their artillery, not just long-range missiles, but artillery to shell it, and they actively use it. And so in Kharkiv, destruction is much more severe than in Kiev. But the good thing is that Kharkiv is also huge. And it's not so easy to destroy a huge city if you have no army of World War II scale. So yes, they are damaging it badly, damaging civilian objects badly. That's a catastrophe. But to destroy Kharkiv as a whole, you just need to have really many ammunition, much more than they have now.
Well, yesterday we saw that, that was quite a shock for me, because when I saw, the prime ministers from three European countries in Kiev, I thought that, maybe the war is actually changing direction. So what was your takeaway from that meeting? Is there anything like in Ukrainian media, what was really talked there? Mostly the humanitarian crisis or something else?
I suppose it was most of all about support of Ukraine with weapons, with supplies, and with everything we need. Even as a gesture, it's a good gesture. Our government made the same gesture to Georgia. During Georgian war, our president Yushchenko visited Tbilisi when it was bombed by Russian troops. So it's good. It's something that warms your heart, actually. But I suppose they also talked about something more, I'd say, practical, like maybe some military units and military assets that left from Warsaw Bloc, because for now Ukraine isn't in need some kind of, I don't know, guerrilla style assets like javelins, like stingers, and so on. We need to have some more serious things like serious anti-aircraft systems and so on. But to include there in our system of defense, it should be something from, post-Soviet countries, post-Warsaw Bloc, because it's hard to implement NATO systems in the system that was created during Soviet times. So we more desperately need, I'd say, MiGs than, I don't know, F-16s or so.
Since you mentioned, how do you guys see this situation regarding MiGs, because for us, it looks like a bit, ridiculous. First, there was an announcement. Then, the Polish asked the US to hand it over. In US, there are some bullshit, reasons why they should not supply it. How do you guys see it, the situation?
Yeah, it looks like a bit ridiculous. It's like some kind of hot potato game. Like you give them the fighter planes. Well, guys, couldn't you be less bureaucratic and more serious here? Of course, we appreciate any help and any support, but for now, these MiGs could be a lifesavers. Well, absolutely literally. and may create some turning point in our warfare, just because, the lack of aviation is one of our biggest problems for now, because without aviation, without superiority, at least in several directions, in several battlefields, you cannot counterattack. Well, you can defend, but you cannot counterattack, because to counterattack, you need to, to have your forces reach the position, reach the rally point, and to reach the rally point, they should be at least supported from the air.
Regarding aviation, like roughly, what is the number of fighting planes that Ukraine is currently using, in the war? Are there any numbers, or nobody is actually talking about it?
I have only very unspecific numbers. It sounds like something like several dozens of, and we use them really sparingly. Just because, yes, for now, Russians have aerial superiority, and only, safe points for us is that we have good anti-aircraft systems, and sometimes our fighter planes can be used in combination with that systems on some specific directions. That's the only thing that helps, and that's the only why we still have some aviation flying, just because it is supported from the ground, but it's still not enough for actual good counterattacks, and that MiGs could be lifesaver. I'd say we desperately need them. And of course, in this situation, all this potato play looks a bit nasty.
Well, I have to ask this stupid question, because everybody probably have seen this ghost of Kiev, photos and stuff. What do you think? Is it a PR campaign, or actually there is an incredible pilot that is crushing, airplanes, Russian airplanes?
I suppose both. From my standpoint, I don't know. I heard there is some person that exists and is really good in that, but I suppose that, from my perspective, that most of these aerial victories is the result of combined efforts of aviation, of different aviators near Kiev, and sometimes even anti-aircraft guards. So yes, for me, the real person may exist, but the statistics is exaggerated because of use of all other victories attributed to this near mystical person.
Yeah, but anyway, the photos look good, so hopefully we will know this how many ghosts you have after the war. There are those peace talks that are ongoing. How do you guys see this peace talks with the country and its representatives that are maybe out of their mind, or completely insane, or just some other kind of brain disorder? How does it look from your side? Because basically what I read about an hour or 2 hours ago, that there is kind of the group is reaching some kind of agreement, or it's closer to the agreement. What do you think? Is it just a mirage? Is it something that the Russians want to take advantage of and regroup, or it's really moving forward?
I don't think it's really moving forward, because there are several things we cannot negotiate for now. Of course, the good thing is that Russians is slowly dropping that bullshit like denazification, demilitarization, blah, 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 blah. But there are still real things we cannot avoid to discuss, and we cannot agree. First of all, it's status of Crimea and Donbass. So that's a standing point for Russia. They cannot refuse from the takeover of Ukrainian territories, and Ukraine cannot refuse its territorial integrity and sovereignty. So that's the main problem. They are trying to negotiate some things like NATO, but I don't suppose it's realistic either, just because of the one simple thing: our president cannot do that. In our constitution, our president should, first of all, stop, not even president, parliament, and not even parliament, but 2/3 of our parliament should, first of all, stop the, war situation, war regime. I don't know the proper English word. And after that, they should change our constitution in several votings, in several points. It's really hard. It's really hard even from pure constitutional, pure jury, I'd say, low point. So it looks unimaginable for now. And yes, the problem is that actually Ukrainian society are not really sympathetic to the idea to drop NATO. So I still not sure. Of course, theoretically, if Russia will leave Crimea and Donbass, and if United States and Great Britain maybe will give guarantees of Ukrainian independence without NATO, and if these guarantees will be strong, and we all will believe that won't be some new kind of Budapest memorandum.
That's what I wanted to say. It looks like this. So
yeah, maybe in that case, I'd myself support this decision, but it's pretty close to some kind of a miracle. Well, for me, the more realistic way of dealing with the situation is by, I'd say, fucking Russian military destroying them, killing them, and driving them off Ukraine. For example, I see how to do that, and I don't really see how to do this peaceful solution. So,
but Victor, so the question is there anything on the table for a negotiation in terms of what? Because I see the territorial integrity is, of course, a no-go. So yeah, we will not talk here about those 3Ds or 5Ds or whatever Ds, from Russia, because they're nonsense. But so what to talk about then, if there is nothing on the table?
Well, first of all, we can talk about some kind of humanitarian corridors, some kind of green corridors, and about saving of civilian population. If Russia will refuse, it will show that they are actually here to kill civilians, and that's pretty bad even for Russians. That's all that I see practical for now. But of course, as you know, the negotiations is always dependent of the results, on the results of the battlefield. So I suppose that maybe we should hold these negotiations just to give Russians some kind of exit point from this scenario, because I see that
what kind of exit point do you see? Because it's hard to imagine the exit point for the guy who wants to be ruling the Slavic world, and who has made a disaster from himself and a laugh from himself. What is theoretical exit point for this dude?
Well, who says that Putin will live forever, for example? Who says that Putin will be there when these negotiations will end? Well, maybe not.
But how likely is that? Because the guy is obviously kind of, he's thinking about his safety first, as Brits, say. So it's really complicated. Probably it will be the best scenario, but besides this scenario.
Well, first of all, I suppose he is not in good shape and not in good health, just physically. Second of all, I suppose that for now he is throwing Russia in that direction that actually is dangerous for any Russian, including him and including those persons that actually had to guarantee his defense and his security. So I am not sure about this situation. He has really fucked everything up, not only for him, not only even for just common Russians, but for very uncommon Russians. So I think that he is not the guy I'd bet to survive till the end of the year, truth to be told.
But Victor, there is one more thing on the table for Russia, which is, of course, nobody really likes to talk about too much and think, but they still have, the possibility of some kind of chemical or biological or even nuclear, disaster or attack. How do you guys see this, or looking at the condition of Russian army, you think that they are incapable of anything?
Well, first of all, yes, looking on condition of the army, I think that even that nuclear threat is much overrated, because if there are nuclear forces in those, well, stands that all their all their military force evolve, I don't think they actually flying. So I suppose that, of course, they can do stupid things. That's Russian. It's what they're doing, stupid things. But I don't think we should view this possibility really seriously. It's more, for now, it's more like a bluff. For now, well, I don't think that every Russian willing to go to Valhalla, to some kind of nuclear paradise, just for Putin to keep his stance in Russia.
But Victor, every Russian does not have to go to, as you mentioned, Valhalla. Basically, there has to be just some enough crazy generals and top level, and those bureaucrats and military officers. I am not sure how sane they are, and what is their mental health state.
Well, I cannot. Looks like we have connection problems.
Yeah, we lost you, but it's good that it's only just connection. So you can start from the beginning. What you think, because after my question, you disappeared.
Okay, I said that of course I cannot evaluate their psychological stability. I'm not a specialist here, but I suppose they are still far from suicidal. So,
but small scale biological or chemical or even some kind of disaster in a nuclear plant in Ukraine. How do you see this?
First things first, there is no such thing as a small using of biological weapon, because any biological weapon can always get out of control, even the smallest, even if you use it against one person. About a nuclear weapon, it's also not the case, because it cannot be used separately on specific ground. It will be just a nuclear conflict in the world. I don't think that Russia will take this risk. About chemical provocation, yes, it may be possible, but still chemical isn't really effective. So what theoretical they could do? Well, I don't know, poison some small town near Kiev with some kind of nerve gas. It will be absolutely barbaric, but with no real military effect. And if they will try to use it as a terror tactics, I'd say they will be damned for eternity.
Well, you are an optimist. That's good to hear. That you guys think that that's out of the question. But we heard, those statements from Russian high-ranking politicians that, or I'm not sure, maybe even Putin said this, that what is the world if there is no Russia in the world? So
I'm 37 years old. I survived Chernobyl. So.
Yeah, man. And you are quite close to Chernobyl, yeah?
Yeah.
All right, so
it's really hard to bluff with Ukrainians.
Okay, so let's look at the situation with the logistics and the supplies of Russian forces. How are they surviving right now? Like, let's say, I understand that those that are by the border, it's easier for them, but the ones that are, let's say, close to Kiev, and how long can they last? You know, or is there a supply chain? Because we see that they are standing, or if they are moving, they usually get a Bayraktar or something else. How do you see the situation in terms of how long they can sustain such like military threats as they are causing right now?
Well, judging from the increase in stealing chickens from local population, I'd say they already have some problems with basic supplies. So if we talk about that guys that stand near Kiev, they have problems, definitely. If we talk about guys on the south of Ukraine, they also have problems. Of course, that's not a problem from guys near Kharkiv, because they are actually standing near the Russia border. But for those who are in Kiev, yeah, they got real problems. And well, this famous long column isn't usable anymore. So just because of it standing on the highway, with broken highway from the beginning to the end, and with Pripyat river that got her dam blown, and that actually flooded everything across them.
So you are not predicting a very long Russian attacks in terms of situation?
Well, theoretically, of course, they can try to arrange supply lines, they can try to defend them, but it won't be really effective, I suppose. It's just really difficult from pure military point of view, just because you need to secure the supply lines through Chernobyl exclusion zone, through Belarus, blah, 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 and under constant fire of Ukrainian long-range artillery and Bayraktars. So not really effective, I'd say.
Yeah, we all heard those songs about Bayraktars. A beautiful thing. So what is the plan to kick them out of the country? How is that possible? Because if you lose, let's say, a bit more territory than is already like it was lost 8 years ago, that's not a plan. A plan is probably to kick them out completely, and that requires counterattacking. Is that possible only with the help of the West, or you think that it would be possible with the weapons and machinery and the personnel that the Ukrainians have right now?
The help of the West is actually a question of number of victims. Yes, we theoretically can do it without help of the West, but it will be much more costly for us. That's the main problem. Well, for example, we use the tactics of active defense. Of course, Russians outnumbered us with material, with techniques, with aircrafts. So we had to use active defense. We have to move and damage. And we were good is that we stopped their advance. We actually destroyed their supply lines, and we made the damage, well, sufficient damage for many parts of their army to lose combat readiness. That's good. Of course, now we need to counterattack, and that could be problematic, but it depends from the region and from the specific situation near each our defense point. For example, I suppose we can do it near Kyiv more or less effectively, because there is Kyiv nearby, there are forests, there are well, good military assets that we have in Kyiv, blah, 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 blah. So it's easier to and of course, they have real problem with supplies near Kiev. So we can counterattack them to lose their combat effectiveness of war. It's much harder in South, for example, where they have more or less good supply lines from Crimea, and where the terrain is flat, that's steppe, and it's much harder to counterattack without superiority in the air. So that's why we need help. We still need help. We will fight, of course, we will fight and we will counterattack in any case, but any help increase our chances of winning and decrease the cost in lives of Ukrainians, both military and civilian.
Yeah, of course, the civilian factor is the most devastating. That's not a polite question, but like roughly, is there a number how many civilians have been lost on the Ukrainian side from the war?
I cannot be sure for now, just because I have no access to the statistics, but it definitely is thousands, but maybe more than dozens of thousands, but I don't know for sure. It definitely thousands, just because, mainly because of Mariupol problem. And it's mainly Mariupol and South regions, yeah. Because in Kiev and Kharkiv, there are bad damage to material, to buildings, but not really many victims. But on South, it's pretty bad.
All right. So for the end, like, what is your prediction like in terms of Crimea and the Lugansk and Donbass? Like, how long they will stay like in the Russian control? I mean, of course, it's like witchcraft, like a question, but because we are pretty sure that you're gonna get back everything around Kiev, but like your predictions for those territories on the east and the south, how likely that by the end, I don't know, of the year or something else similar, you will have it?
I cannot say, because it depends on the success of our counterattack. Of course, if we will be effective in that counterattack, there is no practical need to stop on the former front line. It's not need to stop near Horlivka. It's not need. There is no need to stop on the administrative border of Crimea with Kherson Oblast. Of course, it will be practical, logical to go further, to take Jankoy, native town of my mother, to take Horlivka, to reclaim everything we've lost for now. So from military standpoint, it could be good, and there is no problem with that. From political standpoint, I don't know. It depends from it depends from our government, but I suppose that in the case, if government will try to negotiate more than we actually really ready to give, well, we can lift the ban of critics. For now, even me, being myself a leader of opposition party, I'm not criticizing Ukrainian government, because it's not the time and not the situation. We're in war. But if they will try to give more than we actually could give, from my perspective, if they will try to give my homeland or homeland of my friends, well, I don't think they could do that, and I will make everything for it not to happen.
Well, that's of course, how can you think differently? But the last question, like there was this so-called, referendum in Crimea when they annexed it. Like even, of course, it wasn't legit, but like we know that there was some percentage of population who supported Russians. That it doesn't matter, it's 20% or 40%. How do you think this war affected, the population there? If there would be a legit, voting right now, do you see that there would be, I don't know, some kind of bigger population percentage that would like to join, Russia in terms of what they have seen?
Two moments.
Probably they have not seen everything in Crimea because of the...
So first of all, Ukrainian law doesn't suppose any referendums about status of some specific territories. So it's just not under Ukrainian law to make some kind of such referendums.
So it's illegal. It was illegal, completely illegal.
Absolutely. We have no such option. And from other perspective, I'd say is that during even the next month, the social situation in Russia will be much worse than in Ukraine. I mean, wages, I mean, pensions of older people, and so on. So let me be clear. I grew up in Crimea. Most of people there are not really practically patriotic. They're more like, how do I say it, opportunistic. So if they will see that in Russia, their salary and their pension is like, I don't know, $30 a month, and in Ukraine it 300 or 500 and so on. I don't think they will be so pro-Russian, patriotic, blah 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 as they were once.
All right, Victor. So it was always a pleasure to hear your voice and your take. I see that the time is running out. So hopefully we can even continue on a better note next time, a week or something like that, from now. So take care. Well, not much we as a country can do, but well, we are doing something. There are some initiatives, especially the one called Blue and Yellow. They are delivering, pickup trucks and ammunition and guns. So anyway, there is a huge support in Lithuania for the Ukrainians, and we feel you. But the war, you have to fight yourself. That's the very sad story. So thanks, Victor, and take care and talk to you soon.
I will. Thank you. Bye.
All right. So everybody, ačiū visiems, kad žiūrėjot. Nepamirškit mūsų socialiniuose tinkluose ir iki kitų kartų.